Welcome back to the Roadside Rescue YouTube channel. I'm Ernest, and today I'm going to be answering some questions that I've been getting quite frequently and hopefully clearing up some ideas on the subject of flipping vehicles, which is when you buy a vehicle for cheap and you fix it up in hopes of making money or having a nice vehicle. First thing we're going to address is my wife's CRV. I'll put a picture of it right here. I bought this CRV, it was crashed, it's in good shape, the interior was in good shape, and I paid $200 for it. At the time, it was the middle of the pandemic. I overpaid for it, but it was from a friend, so I didn't mind paying the $200, which is what it would have been worth 3 months beforehand, and what it's worth now a year later. It was just the market for cars in the middle of the pandemic was really bad, and they were paying like $50 for them at junkyards instead of $200. So I paid her $200 for this vehicle because, you know, I wanted to be fair, and the whole front corner was crashed. Her daughter was driving it, came around a corner and hit a vehicle when she came around the corner that was parked on the side of the road. So I had to replace a rim, a tire, an axle, lower control arm, tie rod, outer and inner tie rod ends. It needs still a timing belt and water pump, which is just general maintenance. It needs a new windshield still because that's cracked, and it needs a new seat belt. I replaced the airbags because those were deployed, and I also replaced the fender. So we'll talk about how much that cost, how much the vehicle's worth now, and is it a good idea to buy cars that are in bad shape or disrepair and fix them up in order to make some money on them. And short answer quickly is no, it's usually not effective. So on my wife's vehicle, I replaced a few parts from AutoZone that I was able to get the same day. The axle was $70. The lower control arm was $70. So right there, we're at $140. Let me pull up a calculator here. So we're at $140, and then we replaced the fender. That was, I think about $90 to get it shipped, plus $25 in paint. And it came out okay. The airbags, somebody sent them to me, but I could have expected to pay $120 for those. Both that were about $60 online. And then the new rim was $65. New tire, it needed a new tire. I think I got tires for like $60 a piece, but I got 4 new tires because they were all bald. So that is $240 in tires. And I'm gonna need a windshield, which is about $100. And I'm going to need a new seat belt, which is another $85. So right there we're at $865 plus the $200 for the vehicle, plus the inner and outer tie rods were about, guessing $60. So right there, we've got $1,125 in the vehicle. Add, you know, time for labor, it was 3 days worth of labor. Add miscellaneous things. So we'll just add, let's say like $100 for miscellaneous things, you know, getting in alignment, getting those tires balanced, whatever. That's, you know, a good little buffer. I still need to do that windshield, so that's $100 on top of that, so that would be $1,325. And then I need to do a timing belt and water pump kit. I'm going to do it myself, and that's probably a $120 kit. So we're about $1,500 there. In the vehicle, it's probably worth about $2,000. So right there, you're looking, okay, 5 days worth of work, you know, the headache of rebuilding all this stuff, and then I make $500. But if you do things legally, then I'm gonna have to register the vehicle, pay taxes on it. So there's, you know, taxes aren't much because I paid $200 for the vehicle in the first place, but registration and taxes probably about $200. So then that cuts my profit down about $300. And then if you're trying to do this to make an income, you're going to need a dealer's license because most states will only allow you to buy 5 vehicles in a year. Most states have a limit on how many vehicles you can buy and register in a year. So you're going to need a dealer's license. What people do often, and what I don't, I'm not advocating this, but you can buy a vehicle and then you can have the person sign over the title to you. I'm saying you can. I wouldn't. This is what people do. They'll have the person sign the title over to them, you know, just sign the title, whatever, but they won't fill in their information. So they'll fix up the vehicle and resell it, and they'll just resell that original title to the next person. They won't put any of their information on it. You can also, on some titles, they have spaces where you can resell the vehicle one time on the same title. So like you can buy it from somebody, fill in your personal information, then you can turn in the box below it, you can say, I'm reselling this. So you can put in your information and then sell it to the new person. So Depends if your state does that, and if they don't charge taxes on that, that's a good way to do it. But I wouldn't advocate going around the law, skirting the law, to try and do that. So let's say we've got $1,500 plus taxes, so $1,700 in my wife's CRV, and on a good day, I'm getting $1,900 to $2,000 for it. So I'm not making much money, and that's typically the case with rebuilding vehicles, flipping vehicles. You never really tend to break even. If you skirt the law and paying your taxes and stuff like that, that's where people are making money. But again, that's not legal, and I don't recommend doing that. So like I said, I'm going to be flipping vehicles because for some reason I like doing that, even though it doesn't make much money. And I'll be making some videos on it, but I don't advocate flipping vehicles. If you get lucky, you can make some money. And there's been a few instances where I have. Right now I've got 3 vehicles that I'm in the process of rebuilding, and probably going to turn around and sell one of those for the time being. In the future I'll sell one more, and one of them I'm going to keep probably indefinitely. But you got to do a lot of research. My very first vehicle I bought with a blown engine, and I rebuilt it, and by the time I had everything invested into it, I think I probably had spent $1,000, $2,000 more than what I got out of the vehicle when I sold it. So that brings up a point before I get into this. When you invest money into repairing a vehicle, it doesn't add value in the long term. When you go to resell the vehicle, it doesn't add value. It can help you sell the vehicle faster, but if you put $3,000 in repairs in a $2,000 vehicle, it's still worth $2,000 when you sell it. Again, it might sell faster. Maybe you could sell it for $2,200 because you can prove that you were taking care of the vehicle. And the same goes for vehicles that are in disrepair that haven't been repaired or maintained. They're usually a little bit cheaper or harder to sell, but again, the value is kind of in a little block there where $3,000 does not translate to $3,000, maybe a couple $100 if you're lucky. Usually just ends up selling faster. And so my experience, I found a few vehicles that were worth flipping. I found a vehicle that this guy whose son left for college left the valve cover of this Kia Sportage undone. So I bought it for $300. He told me it ran. I went over there, put it together, and drove it home. And it was pretty simple. It actually had a vacuum leak, so I ended up paying a little bit more for an intake manifold, which was gouged to smithereens on the 4th cylinder. It just had huge gouges in it. I don't know how that happened. I always wanted to ask, but the kid wasn't here. And so I probably had $500, $600 in there with the new battery and everything in the vehicle, and I used it to trade for a vehicle that was worth probably $4,500. I could have sold it probably for $2,500, so I got a good deal on a trade for a Jeep Wagoneer that I've got sitting here. I'll be working on this summer. That Jeep Wagoneer in pristine conditions worth $50,000. It's probably going to take $15,000 to restore it completely, but again, that it's a pretty good deal what I've got, and it's one of my dream vehicles. So I've got that sitting back here. We'll probably work on it this summer. Right now I've got a Nissan pickup that I'm actually torn. I did say I was gonna kind of build the truck into something I've always wanted to do, but I'm kind of torn now whether I need that sitting around all summer or just putting a clutch in it and selling it. I paid $800 for it, drove 2 hours to tow it, so I've got probably $1,000 in it now, and if I put a clutch in it, which is $100 in a day's worth of work, I can probably get $1,900 for it. And then my wife's CRV, that's one we've been talking about. So typically you just don't break even when you flip vehicles. It's hard to do, and it's usually not worth it. It's a bit of a risk. So I don't recommend doing that. That's why I'm talking about it, because people often ask, hey, is this a viable income for me? And it's usually not. It's hard to find those super good deals. They go really fast. That $300 Sportage I found, I messaged the guy like within 10 minutes of him putting it up, and I had to go get it like that afternoon and pay him to hold it because there was already other people who wanted it. So you've got to really be on top of it. I use Facebook Marketplace to find all my deals, and like I said, I'll probably be doing more of those, but I don't advocate doing that. You gotta kind of really know what you're looking for. Like this morning, actually, for example, I found somebody with a Mini Cooper that has 160,000 miles on it, and it looks like it's got a vacuum leak or bad spark plugs because it sounds like they have a misfire from their description. They said it runs rough and feels like it's gonna die. Only when you're stopped. When you're driving, it's fine. So probably a vacuum leak. And they had it listed for $2,000. So I asked them, hey, what's your bottom dollar? And they said $850. I'm waiting to hear back from them. So a lot of times you just won't hear back because they, overcommitted. He might not want to sell it for $850. But if he does, I may pick that up, fix the vacuum leak, probably something pretty simple, and then I can turn around and sell it without, you know, at that point, not putting too much more into it, maybe get $1,000 out of it for fixing a vacuum leak. So again, there are deals to be had, but you've really got to know where you're looking and, you know, just find them. So yeah, that's it. Usually the biggest point I want to make is just because you're investing money in repairs in a vehicle, that doesn't mean that vehicle's worth that much more. Just the tragic story of owning a vehicle. Maintenance, you know, every vehicle assumes a maintenance cost and it doesn't add value. But, you know, if you maintain a vehicle correctly, in the long run, you know, you're saving money. If you buy, for example, a new CRV or a CRV that's a few years old, you pay $8,000 for it and you're paying a 2-year loan for it. So you're going to be paying however much that translates to, let's say $400 a month over 2 years, whatever it is. Then when that time's up that you're paying your loan on your vehicle, what's your associated maintenance cost? Depends on the vehicle you have. If you have an Audi Volkswagen, statistically they have a higher associated maintenance cost. Hondas are pretty good, so we're saying a Honda CRV, then every month after that you're paying an average of maybe $100 in repairs, and that's averaged over a year because you may pay you know, $1,000 a year to do, you know, a water pump, timing belt, putting new tires on it occasionally. Maybe you're fixing a leak that's happened. But that cost of maintaining that vehicle is a lot less than what it would be to have bought it, you know, when you're paying your loan. So maintaining the vehicle is worth it in the long run. It's just not adding value. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense. That's just kind of the point I wanted to illustrate. I'm not making a lot of money on that CRV. I did for my wife. If I sell it for top dollar, I'll maybe make $100, $200 out of it, but that's not worth the amount of work I put into it. Just because, you know, it was a nice deal, something that, you know, was a better car for my wife to drive with our kids. And typically it's not, but you can find good deals. So anyways, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. If there's something I missed out on that, you know, people should know about, leave that in the comments down below, or any questions, maybe I'll address them in a future video. Thanks for watching. I'm Ernest. We'll see you on the next episode of Roadside Rescue.